Hello folks, Jiminy Critic here with you today. In today's show we're going to talk about the upcoming movie Gran Torino. That's right, Gran Torino, coming to a theater near you. It's in limited release here in the month of December, but it should be in wide release all over the place. You'll be able to catch it in January. I believe it comes out on January 9th. This is a much talked about movie that stars and is directed by the acclaimed Clint Eastwood. Maybe many of you are Clint Eastwood fans. I know that I like many of Clint Eastwood's films, both that he has starred in and directed in recent years, as you know. Again, this movie comes out in January the 9th. It's rated R, and believe me, this movie does earn its R rating. I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. The movie's about 2 hours long, and of course this movie is brought to you by none other than Warner Brothers Studios, who's had a long-term relationship with Clint Eastwood over the past years, and a very successful one at that. All right, on to the movie review now. I got an early screening of this movie, Gran Torino, and I have to say when it was all over, I really did like the movie. It was enjoyable. It was kind of Clint Eastwood at his, I don't know, Clintiest. I'm not sure what else to call that, but let me explain. Clint plays a character named Walt Kowalski, and by the way, Clint is the most recognizable star in this movie. When you go to see this, you'll notice a number of other characters that you'll probably recognize from having been in other movies, bit parts, or TV shows, but no real major other stars in this film except for Clint Eastwood. And also you're going to see some new, young, fresh Asian actors that are in this movie, and I'll explain how that all works, and they do really well at their parts as well. But anyway, Clint plays a character named Walt Kowalski, who is a veteran of the Korean War and has also worked he's retired in the movie, but has worked in the Ford factory for over 50 years. So you can see he's kind of an aged man, a tired man, a grizzled man. In this movie, he's kind of one of the last remnants of the, quote, old school type guy in his neighborhood. Most of the family and friends and people that he knew during his years in that house where he lives in a Detroit suburb have long since moved out. And a lot of, and I'm using, his vernacular, foreigners have moved in on his street, and he's not sure why the world's all topsy-turvy and what's happened and what's changed, why everything isn't the way it used to be. According to the movie, we learned that recently in the movie his wife had died, and of course so now he's alone with his dog in the house, and the kids come to visit him from time to time, but there's a very strained relationship with them as well, and that kind of plays out in the movie. Well, the basic structure of Gran Torino, as you might expect, kind of centers around a 1972 Gran Torino, one of the type of cars that Walt Kowalski, Clint Eastwood's character, would have built while he worked in the Ford factory, and he owns it, and it's kind of his, baby that he keeps in the garage. Of course, it's probably got very low miles on it. It looks beautiful. It looks like it just come off the showroom floor. He only takes it out, it seems, to wash it, wax it, clean the interior, probably put a couple of miles on it per year to make sure the engine runs, but other than that, it's kind of his prized possession kept in the garage most of the time. Well, the basic premise of this story is with Walt being all alone now, him and his dog, kind of lonely, grizzled old guy. He wants to keep to himself, and he wants his neighbors to keep to themselves. He's not an interactive, fun-loving kind of guy. And that's where I told you the R rating comes in. This movie has quite a bit of coarse language in it. It fits the character of Walt, and it has some, I guess you'd say, some violent things happening. There's a bit of violence in the movie that plays itself out. Appropriate for what the movie shows you, but this movie certainly is not appropriate for younger children or things of that nature with the language and all the different scenes that play themselves out. But the movie tries to give Walt, I think, a heart. He's kind of like a heartless character when you first meet him, a curmudgeonly old guy, and as the movie goes along, certain things happen in his life and in the life of his neighbors that he's sort of forced to reckon with. He wouldn't do it if he didn't have to, but since he's forced to it in a couple of different circumstances, I don't know, Walt kind of softens up a little bit during this movie. Not to a great degree, but a little bit. And I think it's one of these movies that has an ending that'll kind of grip you and get you at the end. Maybe it's something that's unexpected. I'm not going to really say it's a twist or anything like that. Don't want to give any spoilers away. But you got to see the whole movie through, see what happens in the arc of his character's story and in the story of those around him, how he deals with these new neighbors that have moved in all around him and he's forced to deal with them and what happens. and how he deals with these, especially this young teenage boy and young teenage girl is kind of whom his relationship starts to blossom with. So I'm going to recommend to you that you see Gran Torino, starring Clint Eastwood, coming out in January. I think it's a great movie. I think you'll have a good time. Enjoy it. And I have a word of advice for you that comes from Walt Kowalski himself. Get off my lawn. See you later, folks. That's it. Get off my lawn.